There is also another property that you can use to have control over the alignment of the grid container. Using the justify content property and the align content property, you will be able to align your grid within its container. Sometimes the total size of your grid might be less than the size of its grid container. And this will happen if all of your grid items are sized with non-flexible units like pixels or ems. In this case, you can make use of the justify content property and align content property to align your grid. So using the justify content property will align the grid along the row axis. This property accepts several values, so you can set a value of start. This value will align the grid to the left end of the grid container. If you set a value of end, this value will align the grid to the right end of the grid container. If you use the center value, this will align the grid in the center of the grid container. You can also make use of this property to help you distribute space around grid items. So for example, if you use the value of space around, this places an even amount of space between each grid item, with half-sized spaces on the far ends. But if you don't want to have this extra space on the far ends, you can use the value of space between, which will place an even amount of space between each grid item with no space at the far ends. So with justify content property, you can align your grid along the row axis. If you want to align your grid along the column axis, you can use the align content property. So if your grid container height is bigger than your grid, you can use this property to align your grid along the column axis. And it accepts the same set of values, which are start, end, center, stretch, space around, and space between. So you can play with these values to see how each one will place your grid.